Chapter 201, Fake Revolutionary 3. The door opened and a middle-aged man appeared. His hair was white and he wore a dirty apron. The faint scar on his cheek was the only sign of strength that could be found on the man's face. He didn't seem like a person who would be a guardian. Aileen looked incredulously at the man and hesitantly sat back down. "You are a guardian?" "Yes." "Really? I was worried you would react like this." Aileen glanced at me after hearing the middle-aged man's words. I smiled at Aileen. "I told you, they will be around us." However, to be this close. The guardian was the pub owner who previously made the side dishes for me. Of course, I guessed from the beginning that he was the guardian. He was very similar to the guardian who appeared in Ways of Survival. I also knew that he would save me. If I didn't know this, I wouldn't have declared myself a revolutionary. Aileen asked, "Why did you keep quiet until now? If you are really the guardian, you've had many chances to save people." I had to save my points. You know that a guardian can only save people a total of 5 times. I know, but if you didn't use all 5 times. If I had saved someone else, the pub owner glanced at me before continuing. The revolutionary would be dead. You sound certain that the revolutionary would appear. I have always been waiting. Not everyone gave up like you. Are you saying that to me? The atmosphere seemed to be heating up, and Jang Haeyoung quickly interrupted. Now, Aileen, pub owner, let's stop fighting and think about things going forward. Isn't it good for us if the guardian shows up?" I admired his skillful method of changing the topic. Jang Haeyoung was one of the most extraordinary people in Ways of Survival. He was a foul-mouthed person who desired to stay here, but he was originally an excellent mediator who understood the hearts of people better than anyone else. Jang Haeyoung coughed and tapped on the shoulder of the pub owner. "At any rate, I am surprised. I thought you were only good at cooking. Honestly, couldn't you have given us a clue?" A good chef often has many secrets. Speaking of the revolutionary, how did you like my cooking earlier? Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to eat it. Someone else ate all of it. Jang Haeyoung stared at me with wide eyes, and the pub owner chuckled. Aileen poured cold water on the atmosphere that had barely improved. "You guys are laughing like you're already colleagues. Don't you know? The game has already begun." If Jang Haeyoung was an excellent mediator, Aileen was an experienced schemer. She might not be in the lying-down dragon grade, but she pointed out something that a revolutionary should be suspicious about. I know. In fact, her advice was pointed to a verse of the revolutionary game that appeared in Ways of Survival. It is important to gather the same side, but the most important thing is finding out the identity of the enemy. It wasn't easy to distinguish between who was an enemy and who was a friend. Most revolutionaries failed and self-destructed because they couldn't break through this point. The pub owner received my gaze and smiled bitterly. "Do you perhaps doubt me? Do you think I am a snitch for the Duke?" I laughed without saying a word. I already knew that the pub owner was a guardian. Thus, this gesture was for the people other than me. Shall we start with the introductions first? I am Mark. How about you? I am Yoo Jong-hyuk. Yoo Jong-hyuk, HRMM. It sounds like a name I've heard before. It was because the Earth scenarios were spreading. Therefore, there might be a person who remembered the name Yoo Jong-hyuk in the demon world. I could use this hand if necessary. There were also a few story fragments that I had obtained. Well, let's go to the point. I'm not the Duke's snitch. It is hard to believe, but I'm being honest. No, I believe you. You believe me? Yes, you are really the guardian. Mark stared at me like I was a fool. I don't know what happened, but I guess I passed the test. That's right. Congratulations on entering the Revolutionary Army. The aghast Aileen shouted at the sudden conclusion. No, wait a minute. This person came right after I made the revolutionary declaration. The Duke's snitch wouldn't have responded this quickly. The least revolutionary scenario was 30 years ago. Aileen paused at my quick clarification before she continued. It isn't wrong, but I don't think this is enough evidence. I'm sure that this person is the guardian. How? just as I am sure that you are an engineer of Lindbergh. How could you? I also know that Aslan over there is really Jang Haeyoung, and that he is from Earth. Hey, Prophecy. Aileen's expression changed once she saw Jang Haeyoung's reaction. Can you see the attribute information? As much as necessary. In fact, I had already checked Mark's attribute information. Aileen didn't understand, but she was finally convinced. You have an unusual skill. Until now, there wasn't a skill that could give a glimpse of the position information. My skill is special. I'm glad you have such a skill. Still, the situation is very hopeless. It should be very hopeful. Aileen sighed with half-hearted resignation and said, with this, the fake revolutionary army is formed. Fake revolutionary army, what does that mean? That reminded me, my situation was a bit complicated. I should first give an explanation. The people here were those I needed to take to the end of this scenario. I took some time to persuasively explain that I wasn't a real revolutionary, but a person who could make the revolution a success. Wait, you're not a revolutionary. Two people screamed before my words were over. Thinking back, I never got a good evaluation every time I announced a project at the company. Mark, who exhausted his points because of me, completely lost his soul. Crazy. A fake revolutionary, a poor guardian, the chairman of the civil council, and a frivolous little boy. Is this a joke? Frivolous little boy. Hey, you're talking too much, Mark. Stop fighting. The situation is like this, so we should worry about what we will do next. Mr. Fake Revolutionary, do you have a plan? I have a few things to prepare. I briefly explained my plan to the group. The haggard-looking people became more serious as I talked. By the end of the story, Mark, who joined the fake revolutionary army, opened his mouth. Certainly, those are the measures we need now. Are you going to participate? I don't have a choice. What will you do first? I have to change my face. I pulled out the story fragment face of a Casanova who died from sexual relations. Mark seemed puzzled. Face, that wasn't in the plan. The most important things in the world aren't included in a plan. Why your face? Shouldn't I be handsome to be a revolutionary? Let's see a few hands. At the same time, Earl Psylocke and Han were walking down the streets. Psylocke walked through the streets and glanced at Han. Hey, Han. What? Psylocke wasn't satisfied with this answer, but the other person was in contact with Asmodeus. Since Han was willingly joining him, becoming closer wasn't bad. I think you originally weren't a demon. Can I ask where you came from? Surprisingly, Han gave an answer. A place called Earth. Earth? Ah, I've heard that name before. I guess the planet is famous these days. Since you got Asmodeus' attention, you must have considerable skill. Considerable skill. Psylocke was a bit amazed by the pride that emerged on Han's face. Was he making this face because he was such a great person? What were you originally, a sword master or a great magician? It is similar. What is it? I was the department head of a large company. A large company, what is that? You don't know it, Han thought for a moment. If I had to give an explanation, it is a group similar to a nebula. A nebula? I am just giving an analogy. Then you were a constellation. No, but it is a similar analogy. Then you are amazing. Psylocke didn't understand the words company or department head, but he was forced to feel surprised at Han's explanation. It felt like he slightly understood how Han made contact with Asmodeus. What is that? At the gateway between the nobles section and the civilian section, a huge barricade was being built. It was obviously an iron gate. Psylocke shouted in an annoying voice. Hey, what are you doing right now? A citizen working on the barricade replied, Ah, a noble. I asked what you are doing. Can't you tell just by looking? We are blocking the way. Psylocke was a bit startled by the shameless voice. Who made you do this? This is the chairman's orders. For the moment, nobles can't enter among the citizens. What bullshit? What right? Get rid of those barricades now. Otherwise, I will immediately throw the two of you into the dump." The citizens flinched and retreated at his ferocious growl. Then another voice was heard from behind the citizens. "If you are confident, then try it." The citizen who spoke was different from the other citizens. The unknown citizen released a powerful force from his body. Psylocke became tense and retreated. Most citizens were weaker than nobles. However, that didn't apply to all citizens. There were the mysterious dimensional movers, and some of them were as strong as the demon nobles. "You are doing this just because there is a revolutionary. Do you think we can't kill him?" The reason why the citizens never stood up against the nobles was due to fear of the execution at night. However, things started changing from last night. "You didn't kill him yesterday," the citizens muttered as they gazed at each other. Psylocke was furious, but he couldn't cross the barricade. He was alone and had no way to deal with so many citizens. At this time, Han asked, "Are those guys holding a strike?" "Strike? They are talking about doing what they're not supposed to do." Psylocke understood what Han was saying and nodded. "It is a similar situation." "I see. Leave it to me. I am a professional at dealing with this." A different type of wickedness emerged on Han's face. "This happens when the workers don't know who they are going against. For starters, you have to implant some fear." Aileen helped me with the story fragment that I absorbed through Lamarck Kirin. However, the molding of the face wasn't as easy as I thought. The face of a Casanova who died from sexual relations didn't rest safely on my face until it was evening. I looked in the mirror and smiled with satisfaction. Kim Daksha thought, "It isn't better than you, Jonghyuk, but isn't this decent?" Then Aileen finished the procedure and muttered, "It seems a bit better." "Well, I don't know. Why is the impression so fuzzy?" "I guess it was fine. My nose was slightly higher and my cheeks more taut." The anxious Aileen asked me, "By the way, is it okay to be this carefree? Soon it will be the second night. The executioner will come again." "It will be fine tonight. The Guardian can't protect you indefinitely, don't you know?" "I know. I would prefer not to use the Guardian's points if possible, but now there was no other way. I had to overcome the second night with the Guardian's help. The third night was when I could try a new method." "Surely Mark won't become the target, right? A Guardian can't protect their own life." "Don't worry. No one other than us knows that he is the Guardian." The Duke would still be caught off guard. He didn't think the revolution would succeed. We had to use this chance well. "Aileen, night is coming." Jang Haeyoung yelled from outside, and I went out with Aileen. I had to be the target to avoid unnecessary disturbances. The revolutionary. People remembered my outfit and cheered. I felt a bit sad that no one realized I had changed my face. The second night has arrived. I looked around the street. Mark was hiding somewhere in advance and preparing to protect me. "You are currently under the protection of the Guardian." The creepy flute sounds were heard, and the executioners appeared one by one. They emerged as expected. "Who is the Revolutionary?" "It is me. You can't kill me, yet you gathered here anyway." The executioners looked at each other. "You are the Revolutionary." Then they said "But." At this moment I felt suspicious. Wait, this. It wasn't possible. They already thought of this strategy. The one who YLLDE. The executioners aimed their scythes at different targets. Not the Revolutionary. One of the nearby executioners' scythe aimed for Jang Haeyoung's neck. Chapter 202, Fake Revolutionary 4. "Avoid it." The executioner's scythe moved along with Aileen's call. At this moment, his thoughts accelerated, and the world looked like slow motion. Kim Daksha thought, "What the hell is this?" I gritted my teeth and rushed towards Jang Haeyoung. There might be a difference between the 111th regression and the current regression, but there was no such development in the original second night. The executioners didn't receive any orders from the Duke and should have wasted their second night after being unable to kill me. Kill everyone. Now the actions of the executioners were like those who had been playing this game for a long time. It was clear that someone had given them orders. I pushed Jang Haeyoung away while releasing Blade of Belief and receiving the Executioner's Scythe. The combat shock has made your story configuration incomplete. The situation wasn't very good. I couldn't fight now. The story fragment, Face of a Casanova who died from sexual relations, has been slightly damaged. Damn my face. Fortunately, the executioner had no intention of fighting with me and immediately switched targets. I barely managed to sigh but quickly realized that this wasn't a good thing. Qui est the revolutio alive? Alec. Citizens shrieked as they were cut by the executioner's scythes. No one was dead yet, but half a dozen people were already bleeding. Our revolutionary. I bit my lips. Kim Dokcha thought. Was there a schemer he didn't know about? Or was the Duke already acting? The stories of ways of survival flowed quickly through Kim Dokcha's head. Everyone gather this way. I can't protect you if you scatter. Kim Dokcha judged. The Duke hadn't moved. It wouldn't have ended like this if the Duke moved. The fourth wall was right. The industrial complex would already be ruined if the Duke had moved. Quack. The damage to the people didn't reduce. The injuries from the executioners' scythes continued all over the place. There were over 10 wounded in an instant. The good news was that the enemies couldn't kill many citizens. The game's rules stated that each executioner could only kill 1 citizen per day. At least for 3 days. Aileen shouted, "Everyone fight against them. They can't use execution without the mark." Some citizens armed themselves with weapons at Aileen's words, but the situation didn't easily improve. In the first place, only a few citizens could follow the movements of the executioners. Even then, they didn't last long. Quack. The fact that the people didn't know when the executioners would use the mark added to their fear. They could always use the mark and some citizens would surely die. Furthermore, the Guardian was protecting me and couldn't protect them. Our run. In the end, the ranks collapsed and the citizens started to scatter. No, don't go. Aileen urgently shouted, but the frightened citizens couldn't hear anything. The injured citizens groaned and seemed to be cursing towards empty air. Kim Dokcha was quietly furious. I didn't know who did this, but save me. A wounded civilian crawled towards me. There were many people without good details. Some of them would die by the end of this night if they were unlucky. The same went for those who fled. This night would be remembered as more terrible than any other night in the industrial complex. If the damage gets bigger, then it will go according to their intentions. The citizens would no longer be willing to help the revolution. They would once again follow the orders of the Duke, and Aileen's civil council would be isolated. I couldn't allow this to happen. Thus, I had to play a different hand. The moment I took a short breath to call out to Aileen. This way, kill me. Someone hiding behind a building started shouting. It was Mark. Over here, I am the Guardian. Jang Haeyoung realized what was going on and shouted, "Damn, pub owner, what are you doing?" It was a hasty judgment. It was a valid but bad judgment. I am the Guardian, kill me. As Aileen and Jang Haeyoung glanced at me, I was already running towards Mark. At almost the same time, the executioners were also running. Guardian. Mark's provocation worked well. The scattered executioners gathered in an instant. Kill the Guardian. I used Bookmark and Way of the Wind to quickly rush towards Mark. Mark's pale face was nearing. The exclusive skill, Character List, is activated. Character List. Character Mark Javier. Private Attribute, Dimensional Mover Hero, Retired S-Grade Mercenary Rare, First Class Chef Rare. Constellation Sponsor, None. Exclusive Skills, Cooking LV. 9 Ingredients Processing LV. 8 Old Justice LV. 4 Sword Dance LV. 9 Private Skill LV. 1. This incarnation has a special role in the scenario. Some of the skills will be private due to the scenario penalty. In fact, unlike what I told Aileen, I couldn't know the exact position of a person using Character List. However, I could see that someone had a special position and an unknown skill. It was a fleeting dream. the dimensional mover from the Gaints planet, Mark Javier. He retired as a mercenary and became a chef after coming to the demon world. Every character in the scenario had their own reasons. Mark smiled at me as the scythes flew towards him. I hope you succeed, revolutionary. I didn't know much about his life. He was a supporting role among countless people who died in ways of survival. The Siswitz executioner has placed a mark of death on Mark Javier. Mark Javier have been identified as the scapegoat of the night. Ways of Survival had a huge 3,149 chapters. Some people probably thought this story was too long. They thought it was a long and boring story. But for Kim Dokja, 3,149 chapters was short. I always thought this. I wished that Ways of Survival was longer. I had read so many chapters, but I was still curious about Ways of Survival. Don't worry, you won't die. Thus, I would read a part I hadn't read from now on. Vicky, if I die, Mark shouted with a bit of embarrassment. Why are you so anxious to die? No one will die, at least not in my story. I blocked the scythes of the executioners and used a skill. The exclusive skill bookmark is activated. The proficiency of bookmark has increased, and a new slot has been enabled. I will place Knight of Revolution, Mark Javier, in the 6th slot. The character Mark Javier has been registered in the 6th slot. The number 6 bookmark is activated. Private skill LV1 is enabled. The scythe of an executioner headed to the neck of Mark, who had closed his eyes. You have temporarily acquired the position of Guardian. However, my side was a bit faster. Someone has used their vitality to protect Mark Javier. The executioner's scythe stopped 1 inch from Mark's neck. The scythe stopped like it was caught in a net. Mark knew the meaning of this and his eyes widened. The Guardian was successful, and the mark of death has been released. Of course, Mark wasn't the only one to feel amazed. Is THR Ano the Guardian? It was a voice filled with disbelief. The executioners scattered into the darkness one by one. The executioners couldn't kill anyone, unlike their purpose. I wasn't satisfied, but it was still okay. I sighed lightly and looked around where the survivors were staring at me. In particular, Jang Haeyoung and Aileen were staring with shock. Judging from their expressions, it would be a long night. No one died tonight. As expected, Jang Haeyoung and Mark didn't leave me alone. What are you really? What is your position? Are you actually a guardian? I would have suffered even more if Aileen wasn't taking care of the citizens. I shook my head and sighed. I told you I'm a fake revolutionary. Thus, I can be a fake guardian. Explain it now. Just let it go. I will expose too much if I tell you more details. Don't you know how dangerous it is to disclose your information in a situation like this? Let's say I tell you the information. If you are kidnapped and reveal my information to the Duke, how do you think this revolution will end? In fact, this was an excuse that Yu Jonghyuk frequently used when he found explaining was annoying. Now I was Yu Jonghyuk, so I didn't mind saying it. I am just Yu Jonghyuk, remember that. Kim Dokja thought. He feels like he is actually becoming Yu Jonghyuk. Shut up. I miss Kim Dok, Yahoo speaks with honorifics. As I was playing with the fourth wall, the two men watched him with tired eyes and shook their heads. You are a really difficult person. A message was probably entering Yu Jonghyuk's ears on Earth by now. Perhaps it was this message. Your story is being created in the 73rd demon realm. If he was smart, he would notice what was going on. However, it didn't matter. The atmosphere calmed down and I brought up the main subject. Let's talk about work. There is something that broke my expectations. There is a guy attacking using the rules of the game. I heard that Duke Siswitz isn't a schemer. Do you think the Duke has moved directly? I don't think so. I think it is someone else. Still, tonight went well. Isn't it more favorable to us if there are two people who can use the power of a guardian? Not necessarily. Those guys won't use the mark tomorrow. What? If it is hard to kill me, then they will try to hurt as many people as possible. If the mark wasn't used, The night wouldn't end until the sun rose. Many people were already hurt tonight. We didn't win, we lost. Today people learnt to fear the executioners again. Once tomorrow came, people's attitudes would be clear. People would be afraid of the Duke again and be afraid of the revolution. The enemies wouldn't miss this gap. Mark's expression became darker and he opened his mouth. Then what do we do now? We don't need to do anything. Maybe someone else will move first. I had seen numerous revolutionary games in ways of survival. If things were like this, then the next development was certain. The second position will appear. The second. Yes, a position other than revolutionary, guardian, and executioner. I just said this when someone knocked on the door. It was Aileen. Revolutionary, someone has come to find you. I saw her strangely tense face and knew that the movements of the enemy had already begun. He says he is a spy. Chapter 203, Fake Revolutionary 5. Spy. I once read a phrase about the spies in Ways of Survival. All positions in the revolutionary game belong to either the revolutionary or the dictator. There is only one position that isn't fixed, and that is the spy. The most dangerous and most cowardly position in this revolutionary game. Therefore, Ways of Survival describe the spy as followed. The team that gets the spy can win the game. In the revolutionary game where information was a top priority, the status of the spy was great. It was because the spy could check the position information of the desired person. There was a limit of 10 people a day, but this alone was enough for the spy to shake the entire board. Right now, a person claiming to be the spy was in front of me. Are you Yu Jong-hyuk? The appearance of the man didn't go well with the demon world. He gave off an ambiguous feeling. No, to be precise. What was it? Why did I get déjà vu from this face? I didn't recall a similar appearance in Ways of Survival. I replied to the man, that's right, I am Yu Jong-hyuk. By the way, the man's reaction was subtly strange. HRMM, is that so? At this moment I realized something. By the way, you know my name. Usually he should be asking if I was really the revolutionary. Yet he first confirmed that my name was Yu Jong-hyuk. The man shrugged. Haha, it is a famous name. Unlike his words, the man was stubbornly staring at my appearance. It was as if he was contrasting it with something he knew. I became certain. This person knows Yu Jong-hyuk. I quickly recalled Ways of Survival, but I couldn't make a guess. In the first place, Yu Jong-hyuk was a regressor, and this was officially before he entered the demon world. There wasn't anyone here who should know Yu Jong-hyuk well. If he was good at observing, he might have seen Yu Jong-hyuk by watching the Earth scenario, but it was unlikely. Due to my poor reaction, Jang Hae-young, Aileen, and Mark were nervously glancing between me and the man. Maybe they instinctively felt something. I decided to find out the identity of my opponent. What is your name? I am Aurelius. Aurelius. I hesitated for a moment. I remembered hearing this name somewhere. It was Ways of Survival, but somewhere else. It is an unusual name. So they tell me. Then you are a spy. That's right. The exclusive skill Lie Detection LV3 is activated. During the revolutionary scenario, you can't use the lie detection skill. As expected, this skill didn't work. I had guessed it. There was a scene where Yu Jong-hyuk of the 111th regression had been frustrated after learning that this skill didn't work. I tried it just in case, but it was as I figured. Well, if lie detection could be freely used, then the difficulty of this scenario would be very easy. Fortunately, I didn't only have lie detection. The exclusive skill, Character List, is activated. Of course, I couldn't discern the exact position of the opponent after using Character List. Nevertheless, I could at least figure out if he had a special position or not. The person's information can't be accessed through Character List. This person isn't registered on the Character List. What? I was confused for a moment. The information on the corresponding person is being updated. This person's information will be added in the next update. It wasn't the first time I heard this message, but it was unexpected. The man didn't know my situation and asked, what's wrong?" A person who couldn't be read using character list. It meant this man was a person who didn't contribute to the original ways of survival novel. In other words, the man was a variable I created. But how was it possible? This was the demon world, not Earth. I was hesitating when Mark asked, "Did you come here to join our side?" "Maybe, maybe not." "What does that mean?" "I came to save you. It is obvious that the revolution will be destroyed at this rate. You are coming to sprinkle the ashes, even though the meal hasn't been cooked yet. It isn't a joke. Public opinion regarding you isn't good. I don't know if you have seen outside." Certainly, the outside had been noisy for a while. I heard a knocking on the door of the office. We glanced at each other before heading straight outside. Loud voices were heard as soon as I went outside. "Revolutionary." Countless gazes focused on me after someone shouted. It was a crowd of nearly 100 people. Some of them shouted towards me in exaggerated voices. "It is because of you, if it wasn't for you." My wife was hurt. Someone even threw stones. To be honest, I was a bit surprised. There was some damage, but it wasn't enough for them to come out to such an extreme degree. The voices continued. It was better when the night came once every 3 days. Before the revolutionary scenario was invoked, night only came once every 3 days. Now night was invoked 2 days in a row. It was natural for people's fears to be heightened. Jang Haeyoung shouted towards these people. "You crazy? What are you crazy fuckers talking about? Are you so pathetic? It is okay for one person to die every 3 days." Some people heard this and stepped back. Jang Haeyoung continued to shout, "If you want to live that way, then leave the industrial complex. What does a little boy like you know? Do you have any idea of what it is like outside?" The voices were frightened. Everyone here was well aware of it. Civilians belong to the scenario of the industrial complex. If they leave here, they will be given an exile penalty for leaving the scenario area. The exile penalty. There was no one in the demon world who didn't know what it was. Thus, people would rather turn the roulette of death once every 3 days. Now that the revolutionary emerged, the interval of the roulette had decreased from 3 days to 1 day. Didu, we have to experience night every day from now on. What are you going to do? What are you going to do in the future? The voices were filled with panic. Aileen and the other council members tried to restrain them, but the crowd's actions became fiercer. I turned my head and saw Aurelius staring at me with a despicable smile. "Do you now understand what's going on?" A revolutionary who didn't have the support of the citizens was bound to be defeated. I smiled bitterly. "You are on the Duke's side." "It isn't important. The important thing is your choice." "So what do you want?" "Surrender to the Duke. Everyone else can live except for you. In any case, your revolution is going to fail." "I will be the sacrifice." "I'm not saying that. I'll help you find a way to live." "How?" "If you are really Yu Jonghyuk, I will protect you." "Doesn't the Duke want to kill me?" "My backer is far beyond Duke Siswitz. An existence that Duke Siswitz couldn't be compared to." I was quite intrigued by the suggestion. If I was Yu Jonghyuk then, I might have thought about it for a moment. "Of course I will refuse." "I see, you will regret it." The next moment, Aurelius disappeared. In the midst of the crowd, someone shouted, "Let's give him to the Duke." "The Duke said he will end the scenario if we hand him in." "Then the night won't come." The voices that came out spread like wildfire. It was very interesting. In fact, I had seen a similar sight before. Maybe it was during the Mino soft labor negotiations. "Everything is over when the next night comes. We have to catch the revolutionary before that." The crowd was moving with overwhelming agitation. The people were so terrified that it led to a backlash against me. "As somebody grab him." I stared at them for a moment before stepping towards the crowd. The crowd was confused as I walked forward without any fear. My surroundings split apart like Moses, wave because the people tried to avoid contact with me. Are you that afraid of the executioner? I spoke as I pulled out unbroken faith. Then the blade of faith vibrated, and a white light burst from it. My voice, filled with magic power, poured cold water on the crowd. A few people in the crowd were surprised by the wave of magic power and fell on their asses, which others backed away. I spoke towards them in a serene voice. Everybody has forgotten that this isn't the night. I raised the sword towards the air. The magical wave of white pure star energy poured from the heart of the gold dragon and filled the dark sky with a white light. My actions frightened people and they exclaimed, What? He wants to kill people. The revolutionary is killing civilians. The surprised people screamed and alien shouts could be heard. However, I ignored all sounds and ran to the center of the crowd. Then I swung myself towards someone in the crowd without hesitation. First one. He was one of the men who had been inciting the crowd. The man was pierced in the heart and couldn't even scream. He just watched me with wide eyes as he died. The exclusive skill, fourth wall, is activated. The sensation of murder was gnawing at my hand. Obviously, I was affected by the move to kill someone. It was due to the habit that formed from trying to keep the king of no-killing attribute. However, today I didn't hesitate a single bit. It was as if I really had become Yu Jonghyuk. The second one. The blade moved through the air and blood scattered. A second man's head flew away. Blood splashed, wetting my clothes while the fearful expressions of the people around me could be seen. I moved my sword and stabbed the last man in the back. The last one. I killed 3 people in an instant and looked around. There were constant screams as the grieving civilians watched me. It wasn't just the citizens. Aileen, Jang Haeyoung, and Mark were the same. They didn't understand what was going on, and panic filled their faces. The revolutionary killed ordinary civilians. Nothing I said would be a convincing explanation. Nevertheless, this was something I never needed to explain. A change in the revolutionary scenario has occurred. Everyone looked up as the message was suddenly heard. It was followed by subsequent messages. An executioner has been killed by someone. An executioner has been killed by someone. An executioner has been killed by someone. Current number of executioners remaining, 7. People's expressions changed at the messages. A total of 3 people died. The number of dead executioners was also 3. The people watching me with trembling eyes now screamed and retreated from the dead bodies. It was as if they were looking at something terrible. Yuyak. The executioner, they were hiding here. Aaron was an executioner, oh my God. Executioners hid among the civilians. In the midst of this colossal betrayal, the crowd gradually realized. The executioners had died. The executioners they thought to be invincible had died like a normal man. It was a story they had never experienced before. In front of this story, people were being inspired in unexpected ways. One man rose first and drew a sword. His eyes were blazing with anger. Son of a bitch, kill those sons of a bitches. Those who had just been threatening me started to trample on the corpses. The seething heat of the crowd was several times their previous emotions. They had all lost something to the executioner. This was an act of miserable revenge, but it was the best they could do. I leisurely strolled through the crowd. Then I grabbed the neck of a man. Kyuak. You still have the great skill to incite others. The man who tried to escape struggled in my hands. How are you unscathed, Department Head Han Myungo? Chapter 204, Unidentified Wall 1. I left Aileen, Mark and Jang Haeyoung to clean up outside and dragged the unconscious Han Myungo back to the office. To be honest, it was a revelation. I never thought Han Myungo would still be alive. Department Head Han Myungo. Before we reached the third scenario, he was cursed by Demon King Asmodeus after killing the Dark Keeper. I thought he had died before I entered Cheongmuro and hadn't expected to meet him in the demon world. I placed Han Myungo on a chair in the meeting room. I used a story suppressor that I had borrowed from Aileen. Kim Daksha thought, the department head has aged a lot. There were many small wrinkles on Han Myungo's face. Moreover, his whole skin was blackened. Putting aside the wrinkles, the skin discoloration was a sign of a species variation. The longer I looked, the more I could see the old face. Still, many human traces were missing, and it was hard to know without looking closely. Yu Sanga, Lee Giliang, my mother and Song Minwoo, they were the people I couldn't confirm using character list. All of them were people who were involved with me before the scenario or at the start of the scenario. Han Myungo was also one of them. They survived in this world because of me. That's why I couldn't read their information with character list. I know you're awake, so get up. Oh, you. Han Myungo, I asked the spy, no, the self-styled Aurelius. Aurelius, did you pick the name personally? Han Myungo opened his eyes, and I was filled with a vague feeling of certainty. Aurelius. This was the decisive clue that convinced me this person was Han Myungo. A web novel. Hey Kim Dokja Sasai, how much time do you have to read this shit? During my days at Minosoft, I had heard these words after I was caught reading a web novel. If you are going to read a book, then you should read something like this. Read a good book if you want to build up your specs. Han Myungo was holding the book called Meditations, written by Marcus Aurelius. The first few pages of the book were completely discolored. You usually carried the Meditations book that you can't read. Your bluffing still remains. Who the hell are you? Han Myungo didn't recognize me at all. It was because I changed my face ahead of time. If I hadn't done that, I might be the one to fall into the trap. I smirked and asked, who do you think? At this moment, something flashed through Han Myungo's eyes. Don't tell me. As expected, Han Myungo was Han Myungo. Even the parachute department head needed to do some work to survive. I quietly brought a finger to Han Myungo's lips that were opening. SHHH. Oof doof oof. If you say anything, then you will die here. Think to yourself, do you understand? I was worried about another transcendental existence listening. There were no Dakibai channels here. However, the lack of a channel didn't mean there was no way for other beings to peep. The fourth wall says that the Demon King, demon of rage and lust, is looking at stupid Kim Dokja. Better than expected, it could tell me something like this. Ahem. Demon of rage and lust. Like constellations, the demon kings had their own modifiers. After all, they were fallen constellations. Of course, there were those who didn't use the modifiers as resistance against the constellations. If I remembered correctly, Demon of Rage and Lust was the nickname for Demon King Asmodeus. Han Myungo seemed to be his subordinate. It was a high-level position where his vision was shared. Shouldn't you pay coins if you want to keep peeking? Han Myungo's eyes widened again when he saw me speaking towards the air. He noticed who I was talking to. Small sparks appeared in the air. If this continued, Asmodeus was likely to gain my information. One day I would reveal my story, but now wasn't the time. I thought for a moment before pulling a sword out of my coat's subspace. It was the 4-yin demonic beheading sword. It had been a really long time since I used it to destroy the absolute throne. It was a sword that could temporarily evolve to a star relic if the power of the Big Dipper was borrowed. It was a sword that could break through the constellation's affinity with the star relic. Originally, I required the help of the Big Dipper to manifest that strength. Now that I was a constellation, I could use the power of this sword without their help. The 4-yin demonic beheading sword has responded to your story. If you aren't going to pay, then get lost. I swung the sword over Han Myungo's head. The message appeared as I swung the sword, and strong sparks appeared in the air. The connection between the Demon King, Asmodeus, and his household member is temporarily disconnected. Han Myungo was now shocked beyond surprise. He never thought I would have the power to break off his link with the Demon King. I warned Han Myungo. Here, my name is Yu Jonghyuk. Nod if you understand. Han Myungo stared at me with a complicated gaze and barely nodded after thinking about it. He made the correct judgment because he knew that his life was precious. I released his mouth, and Han Myungo gasped as he looked up at me. How the hell? I heard you were definitely dead. I'm not dead, thus I'm alive. The terrified Han Myungo asked, W, what are you going to do with me? We'll see, I'm thinking. H, help me. The years we spent together aren't short. I don't have any good memories of those years. I am a spy. I can help your revolution. I can see other people's positions. It seemed to be true that Han Myungo was a spy. Indeed, the spy didn't emerge in the 111th regression. It wouldn't be strange if a surprising person appeared as the spy. I don't need a spy. I found the executioners without you. Han Myungo's eyes once again shook at my words. Then Han Myungo spoke the question he had been curious about. That reminds me, how did you find the executioners? I roughly knew what was going on, but I decided to be fooled for a bit. I didn't know they were executioners. What then, how? My words were true. The descriptions of some executioners appeared in ways of survival, but it was written in passing, and I didn't remember them. It would also be hard to recognize just based on the description. I didn't kill them because I knew they were executioners. I just used a skill to figure out that they had a special position. That information was enough for Kim Dokja. Han Myungo didn't know anything and exclaimed, the people you killed could have been innocent or have important positions. Why, yes. For example, a fighter or... Stop talking about useless things. If you are trying to drag out the time because you think other nobles will come to rescue you, they won't come. Ha ha ha, what do you mean? It is only the executioners that the citizens are afraid of. Without them, the nobles can't easily invade the civilians' area. Now that he realized that things were wrong, Han Myungo's struggles became worse. He stared at me with red eyes and yelled, If you kill me, you will receive the Demon King's wrath. My previous self would have been afraid. Do I look like I'm afraid of the Demon King? I raised my constellation status. It was to such a slight extent that the dukes of the industrial complexes and the demon kings of other demon realms wouldn't notice. No matter how light, I was a constellation, and it was sufficient to kill Han Myungo. Han Myungo trembled before finally giving up. What do you want? It was the question I had been waiting for. In any case, Han Myungo was someone who had made contact with the demons here. It would be wiser to use him as much as possible. Make an oath of existence. Do you know what it is? That. Do it if you want to live, or you can go out and be beaten to death by the common people. Han Myungo sighed. What do you want me to swear? You won't interfere in the revolution. You won't lie. You will truthfully answer any questions I ask and cooperate with me wholeheartedly. For how long? 1 year. Shit. It was better to have a deadline when making such a violent oath. If I forced a permanent oath, then the object of the oath might go crazy. If they were given hope that the oath would one day end, the other person would agree to the oath more easily. I understand. I will make the oath. Sparks sprung from Han Myungo's heart and the oath was completed. Now there was a question I wanted to ask Han Myungo. Department Head Han Myungo, how are you still alive? Han Myungo started telling his story. The hardships he suffered after separating from us at Chungmuro and how hard it was for him. He tried to make himself look as poor as possible, and I interrupted in the middle. Tell me the important things. What do you mean? At that time, you obviously received the Demon King's curse. How did you become a subordinate of the Demon King? Asmodeus is that simple in existence. The 72nd Demon King, Asmodeus. No matter how long Han Myungo's tongue, he didn't have the ability to bewitch the Demon King. In addition, Han Myungo didn't have a unique story. The Demon Kings were just as jaded and bored as the constellations. The story of a department head of a big company wouldn't be sufficient to even talk to the Demon King. Han Myungo licked his lips for a long time and his expression distorted in a miserable manner. I was about to rush him when Han Myungo opened his mouth. I gave birth. Huh? Kuok-ai-ai. I thought I heard wrong. I was about to ask again when Han Myungo burst out crying. I gave birth to a child. Chapter 205, Unidentified Wall 2. Unfortunately, Han Myungo's words didn't continue. Han Myungo was knocked unconscious because he received a penalty from disclosing some of the details of his contract with Asmodeus. I felt a bit sad because it was broken off at the exciting part. Kim Dokja thought, in any case, the demon kings and constellations have started to show interest in this world. The land of abandoned scenarios, the demon world. This world, which had long been shunned by the constellations, was starting to receive attention again. Humans can't beat them. Compared to them, we are just insignificant bugs. Han Myungo had said this several times. He had been in the demon world for several months, so he was well aware of the strength of the senior nobles and demon kings. This despair was understandable. In fact, even the early mid-Yu Jonghyuk had struggled in the demon world. Of course, that was Yu Jonghyuk's story. I was different. My stomach started growling because I had stayed awake all night. I headed to the pub and asked Mark to cook some simple dishes. Jang Haeyoung was sitting absent-mindedly at a table. I quietly approached him and sat down. "Hyuk, you say that every time." Jang Haeyoung stared at me with an ugly expression and screamed, "What is it? What other issue are you coming to create? Why are you so grouchy?" "Never mind." "Why, what happened?" Jang Haeyoung couldn't easily answer my question and stared at the plate in front of him. I knew that I couldn't urge him and just waited. Mark glanced between Jang Haeyoung and I. It was unknown what he was thinking, but he suddenly winked. After a while, Jang Haeyoung opened his mouth. "Why did you let me join the Revolutionary Army?" "What?" "I'm not a guardian or revolutionary. I'm not the chairman of the civil council like Aileen." The character Jang Haeyoung has used lethargy LV. 4. The character Jang Haeyoung has used self-loathing LV. 10. Damn, it was starting. I had forgotten for a while. If Yu Jonghyuk suffered from the regression depression, then this person suffered from a thorough self-loathing. I didn't think there were any main characters of Ways of Survival who were sane. The small shoulders quivered. I would feel better if I hit him on the shoulder, but it would be hard for him to feel comforted. Your understanding of the character Jang Haeyoung has increased. Jang Haeyoung stared out the window. He seemed to be looking at Aileen, who was cleaning up the previous incident. Jang Haeyoung spoke again. "Night will come again. Will you still be able to protect the people?" "Maybe not," I answered honestly. "I don't know all the executioners. It is impossible to catch all of them before tomorrow's night." There were 7 executioners who hadn't been caught. If those 7 people made up their minds and started attacking people, tomorrow night would be a bloody festival. I added before Jang Haeyoung could fall into despair. "There is no other way to stop it. We must find the fighter." The fighter. It was the only position that could deal with an executioner during the night. If I could find that position, it wouldn't be unreasonable to restore the atmosphere. However, Mark interrupted from where he was cooking. "I'm sorry, but there probably won't be a fighter." "What, Mark, how do you know this?" "There is no one from the old generation to pass on the skills of a fighter. Unlike other positions, a fighter could only receive the position through succession." Mark kept speaking. "After the fighter died protecting the former revolutionary, there was no successor." I already knew this information. In fact, there was no fighter in this industrial complex. In the original novel, Yu Jonghyuk had been very confused by this. I bit into the sandwich that Mark gave me. "If there isn't a successor, then we have to create one. Inherit the position from another fighter." As far as I know, there are no fighters left in the 73rd demon realm. I'm not going to find them in the demon world. "What?" I glanced at Jang Haeyoung. Now was the time. I spoke to the blank-looking Jang Haeyoung. "Hey, talk to the wall." What does that mean?" "You have a wall. Every time you try to learn something, that wall blocks you." How do you know about the wall?" The startled Jang Haeyoung stared at me. "There are ways for me to know," I smirked and replied. Other people might not know it, but Jang Haeyoung had a wall. To be precise, it was a wall called the Unidentified Wall. This wall had been blocking Jang Haeyoung's growth so far. "Isn't it because of the wall that you never learn any skills? That's why you're like this. lethargic self-loathing. W what? I know you think it is a wall of talent. However, it isn't a wall of talent. It has a different purpose. No, how do you? In any case, quickly talk to it. You can communicate with that wall. Jang Haeyoung's face turned red after hearing that he could talk to the wall. I wanted to tell him not to worry. After all, I was in the same boat in regards to talking to a wall. Jang Haeyoung hesitated before slowing opening his mouth. That. Quickly. A moment passed before Jang Haeyoung triggered the skill. The character Jang Haeyoung has used unidentified wall LV. 1. Jang Haeyoung's pupils were white. It wasn't visible to me, but perhaps in Jang Haeyoung's vision, he would be surrounded by a white wall. A pure white wall with nothing written on it. It wasn't strange for Jang Haeyoung to get a mental illness if he was blocked by such a wall every time he tried to learn a skill. Jang Haeyoung carefully opened his mouth. Excuse me, wall nim. Surprisingly, I also heard a message the moment Jang Haeyoung spoke. The unidentified wall is giving off a wrinkled impression. I didn't know why. Maybe it was because I had a similar wall. Either way, it was good. The unidentified wall is looking at its master. The unidentified wall says, "You aren't qualified yet." As expected, it was just as petulant as the original novel. I was prepared. Hey, don't do that and give your permission. If you don't help, your kid will die. Jang Haeyoung was surprised by my sudden words and stared at me. The next moment, the unidentified wall spoke. The unidentified wall says, "Who are you?" The unidentified wall says, "How can you hear my voice?" It isn't important who I am, just give your permission. If it is level 1, can't he use the minimum of features? Why are you blocking him? The unidentified wall is frowning. It was angry at my words and sparks appeared around Jang Haeyoung. The probability was putting pressure on me, a constellation. Myth-rated attributes were truly different. This wouldn't be as easy as I expected. I stepped back from Jang Haeyoung. The sparks that suddenly appeared in the air surprised Mark and the other pub customers. Once I had them evacuated, I opened my mouth again. Are you going to keep acting like this? It isn't good for you. Won't you have to find a new host if he dies? The sparks of probability once again appeared. It was a measure of Jang Haeyoung's strong potential that he could create such a force with the power of a single skill despite not being a constellation. Thus, I needed to awaken Jang Haeyoung here. The unidentified wall says, "You are impudent." The sparks that burst from Jang Haeyoung's body became increasingly intense. I was a bit baffled because I didn't know the reaction would be to this extent. It happened the moment I thought a small probability storm would occur here. The exclusive skill, Fourth Wall, is strongly activated. The sparks around me calmed down at once. To be exact, a larger spark seemed to have swallowed the surrounding sparks. The fourth wall greets the unidentified wall. The unidentified wall is surprised. I was also shocked. The walls could converse with each other. The fourth wall greets the unidentified wall with pleasure. Jang Haeyoung's face was turning reddish-white. He was clearly seeing this scene. The fourth wall opened its mouth. Fry end. The unidentified wall is starting to shake. I didn't know about the communication between the walls, but just by saying hello, the air around Jang Haeyoung started to distort into a mysterious form. The unidentified wall says, "You, what are you?" The air around me shook faintly. The fourth wall was moving in a form different from usual. I couldn't express it well. One thing was clear, it seemed to be angry. The unidentified wall is complaining about the pain. The unidentified wall is complaining about the pain. The unidentified wall is complaining about the pain. There were brilliant sparks as Jang Haeyoung grabbed his head and screamed. How much time passed? There was a heavy feeling and the unidentified wall sent a message. The unidentified wall says, "W, who are you?" Honestly, I had no idea why Jang Haeyoung had such a wall. Ways of Survival didn't explain exactly what the unidentified wall was. I thought it would mention it in the ending, but, of course, This didn't mean it was impossible to predict the identity of this wall. The existence of this wall was presumably related to Jang Haeyoung's job before he moved dimensions. This is the first time I have seen. Jang Haeyoung was staring into the air with a very perplexed expression. The unidentified wall has recognized its master as the incarnation, Jang Haeyoung. It was a complicated procedure, but with the help of the fourth wall, Jang Haeyoung succeeded in being acknowledged by the unidentified wall. Then, a new window popped up in front of Jang Haeyoung for the very first time. Enter the modifier or name of the presence you want to send a message to. Thanks to the fourth wall, I also saw the message. Jang Haeyoung stared at me. What is this? What should I enter? In fact, it was because of this ability that I had to bring Jang Haeyoung with me. I had to borrow the wall's strength through Jang Haeyoung so that I could have the power to fight against those fucking nebulae. Please enter the names I will tell you. Yes. I called out several names. They were all names of characters who had fought with fighters in the demon world in the original novel of Ways of Survival. Then another window popped up. Please enter a message to send. What should I write? I want to become a fighter, please help. Will it work? I don't know, just try it first. Jang Haeyoung sent the message, then we waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 10 minutes. Jang Haeyoung asked, did I do it properly? I guess it failed. The damn Starstream had no consideration for newbies. I asked for help so earnestly, but no one sent a reply. We sent a few more messages. I'm looking for someone who will make me a fighter. I need the skill of the fighter. Please help. No matter how many times he sent the message, there was no reply. Maybe they thought it was a spam message and didn't answer, damn. I had no talent for writing, so I didn't know what message I should send to get a reply. It would have been nice if Han Soo-young was here. She would have come up with a good idea. Jang Haeyoung frowned and thought about something for a while. Then he opened his mouth. I need to get a reply. Can I write what I want? Have you thought of something? Jang Haeyoung lightly nodded and typed his message. I am a 15-year-old schoolgirl. Hey, wait. Before I could stop him, Jang Haeyoung pressed the send message button. The message was sent to random constellations because no recipient was entered. The message wasn't even sent to a particular person. I shouted in a frustrated manner. You are dealing with constellations. Do you think that would work? Just watch. What the hell did this guy eat? The next moment, a reply has arrived. We stared at each other with bemused expressions and confirmed the reply. To my surprise, the constellation who replied was someone I knew. Sender Abyssal Black Flame Dragon. Chapter 206, Unidentified Wall 3. Jang Haeyoung started talking in earnest with the Abyssal Black Flame Dragon and laughed with pleasure. I watched Jang Haeyoung and slightly scolded him. What's so funny? It's just funny to talk to this kid. Jang Haeyoung was a strange guy who treated a high-ranking constellation as a friend. But the even more ridiculous thing was that the Abyssal Black Flame Dragon had sent a reply. This jerk only cared about Han Soo-young, so why was he responding to the wrong message? Then, as if to defend the Black Dragon, Jang Haeyoung shook his head. I don't think he is a bad guy like you think. What nonsense is this? Did you fall for him? He is more gentle when speaking than you think. Gentle? A bastard who replied to a 15-year-old schoolgirl is gentle. I wondered if I should explain the nasty context when Jang Haeyoung replied. He replied because I am 15 years old. What? He replied because you are 15 years old. What a complete trash. I knew that the Abyssal Black Flame Dragon was cruel and tasteless, but I didn't know he had such preferences. I was suddenly a bit worried for Han Soo-young. Why are you so agitated? He is just happy to have a friend. He says he is 15 years old. What bullshit. I don't know how old he is, but is there a 15-year-old constellation? At this moment, a setting suddenly rose in my mind. The constellations living in the eternal starstream are accustomed to confining themselves in certain frameworks to protect their sense of self. A representative example is age. They tend to transfer themselves to a specific age and think they are that age. Don't tell me, even so wasn't 15 years old too much, really. Then a scream was heard from inside the meeting room. It was Han Myungo. I turned and spoke to the startled Jang Haeyoung. I have to go talk to him. I'll be back in a minute. I know, what should I ask? Just let him go. In any case, he isn't a warrior. I'd rather you talk to someone else. Don't you have the list I gave you earlier? Try them again. Jang Haeyoung nodded. I was uneasy after seeing his excited expression, but I thought it would be okay. This was originally his ability. The awakening of the unidentified wall was a bit faster than the original novel, but this was the best for now. The industrial complex's revolution was impossible without the help of the wall. I opened the door to the meeting room. Han Myungo had just woken up and was covered in sweat. Why did I faint? I quietly closed the door of the meeting room and replied, You fainted after remembering the pain of childbirth. Sweat was flowing down Han Myungo's face like he had a nightmare. That's it. Asmodeus probably cursed you as well. That son of a bitch. Han Myungo expressed his hatred for the Demon King more directly than before. It was originally a dangerous thing, but now he had left Asmodeus' sight thanks to the 4-yin demonic beheading sword. I pulled out the chair again and sat back down. Listen again. What child did you give birth to, and why did you receive Asmodeus' favor? I first have to explain why I had a child. I have a rough idea. Is it due to the Dark Keeper that we fought before? Right before we split apart, Han Myungo had been affected by the parasitic tentacles of the Dark Keeper. Usually, such a thing didn't necessarily mean the conception of a demon species, but it happened directly with Han Myungo. That isn't the case. It isn't because of the Dark Keeper that I had the child. Then, it is because of the curse. Asmodeus' curse dealt the final blow to Han Myungo, who was infected by the Dark Keeper. Asmodeus' curse consumed probability to realize the most terrible thing that the target thought of. In other words, I understand. By the way, is that possible? A man's body giving birth. Don't ask about that part. I lightly nodded. It was the minimum courtesy for the elder who had an unbelievable experience. We were silent for a moment. It suddenly felt weird that I was talking to Han Myungo like this. Kim Dokja thought, it is a strange feeling. Before the destruction came, Han Myungo was a person who made life hard for office worker Kim Dokja. He was one of the top-ranked bosses to be avoided. Certainly, there were days like that. It was a time when I felt bitter over the 3,000 convenience store bento and when I had to count every bit of my monthly salary. Now those days were gone. Kim Dokja and Han Myungo were no longer an office worker and department head. Instead, they were talking about a demon king. Kim Dok, no, you Jonghyuk SSI, do you know what it's like to be a father? I was a bit baffled by Han Myungo's sudden words. I don't know. I learned. In fact, it was hard to say if Han Myungo should be called a mother or a father, but I decided to move on because this wasn't the important thing. Han Myungo had a serious expression. It was painful. The words sounded much more painful than any of Han Myungo's previous statements. I was also happy. I looked at Han Myungo with surprise. At this moment, I realized the identity of my strange feeling. Maybe I didn't want to admit it. Everybody changed. Whether they were good or evil, a child or an adult. She is a very pretty daughter. I would love to see her once. Is she in the demon world? Now she isn't with me. His expression darkened and I got a hunch. Then, it is a long story. Will you help? Tell me first. I would like to hear your story. Han Myungo hadn't come directly into the household of the Demon King. In a place that I didn't know, Han Myungo's story had continued. He took his daughter and broke through the scenario alone. Capture the flag. The War of Kings. The 5 disasters. I couldn't believe such a story had happened in places I couldn't see. I couldn't believe that Han Myungo could show such devotion to someone. On the other hand, I had to admit it. I was no longer the old Kim Dokja. The man in front of me wasn't the old Han Mungo. I didn't know if the birth of his child was the trigger. The only thing that was clear was that Han Mungo had changed. It was tough. Yes, it was hard. I almost died many times. At the end, I fell into a crisis I couldn't escape from. He was finally driven to the brink at a time when the Dark Castle scenario hadn't officially started yet. Han Mungo was surrounded by demons and demon nobles and realized he could no longer defend his child. Then he prayed for the first time in his life. He prayed for someone to protect his child. If this child lived, he would do anything. To his surprise, a presence answered his prayers. A beautiful child. It was Asmodeus. Did the Demon King steal your child? I felt bad because of the terrible things I imagined. Asmodeus was the Demon King of rage and lust. It was obvious what would happen if a child entered his hands. However, Han Mungo's expression was calm. She is safe. After all, she is a child born from Asmodeus' curse, and the Demon King isn't in a situation where he can touch my daughter. What does that mean? The Demon King has made my daughter his incarnation body. I seem to know what happened. It might be a whim, but the Demon King Asmodeus made Han Mungo's child one of his incarnation bodies. As one of the child's parents, Han Mungo was given a demon noble title. That's how I became a demon. After hearing this, I felt that Han Mungo's life was very difficult. His life might be considered successfully because he got a title, but it might be considered a failure because his child was taken. Han Mungo's eyes were somber as he opened his mouth again. I want to save my daughter. For a moment I thought I heard wrong. What did he want? I won't speak long words. Help me. I won't forget your grace if you help me this once. What was this situation all of a sudden? He filmed a life theater all by himself, and now he wanted me to help him. You've been watching me for a long time and should know well. I am a human who is a coward. However, this is something I can't concede on. Last night was out of my expectations. I was scared, but I actually didn't hurt anyone. The executioners were excited by the appearance of the Guardian and did what they wanted. Han Mungo swore the oath of existence and couldn't lie to me. Then this wasn't a lie. I decided to respond rationally. I'm sorry, but I have no plans to fight Asmodeus. This would become complicated if one of the 72 Demon Kings were lost. It would attract foreign forces when the revolution hadn't even begun yet. Han Mungo's next reaction was surprising. You don't have to fight Asmodeus. You just have to continue doing what you are doing. Start a revolution and kill the Duke. I will help you. Aren't you on the Duke's side? Originally, that was the case. Now that things have become like this, I think it will be okay to help you. What do you mean? Asmodeus didn't want me to help the Duke. He had a suggestion for me. If I made the story he wanted, he would return my daughter. That's why I attached myself to Duke Siswitz. This part wasn't in the original novel. It was no wonder. From the beginning, Han Mungo wasn't present in the novel. I struggled for a moment before asking, what story does the Demon King want? The king of the 73rd Demon Realm. Han Mungo slowly raised his head and stared at me. Han Mungo's eyes were exactly the same as the interviewer on the day I joined Minosoft. The Demon King. He told me to make the 73rd Demon King with my own hands. Yu Zhanghyuk was starting at the night sky with indifferent eyes. The sky with different constellations from Earth was visible. Yu Zhanghyuk's body leaning against the heaven-shaking sword looked thinner than usual as he counted the stars. His body was covered with blood and his face was wounded. There was a second-grade monster that had just been defeated lying in front of him. The 15th scenario is finished. Planet La Gracia. Yu Zhanghyuk came here through a personal scenario from one of the constellations of this world. Originally, he would have proceeded with Earth scenarios. However, he had strong colleagues this regression and decided to leave the scenarios to them. The situation was growing faster than his previous regression. It was right for him to stockpile his power when he could. This current power wouldn't be enough if he entered the scenarios in the 20s. I need to be stronger. That's why Yu Jonghyuk replaced the main scenario with personal scenarios, since the 11th main scenario. He also picked the hardest personal scenarios with the most rewards. Sometimes he even challenged personal scenarios that were too reckless for him. Fight, fight, and fight again. As always, he trained and overworked his body and spirit. He thought it would fill a bit of the sense of loss that he couldn't understand. Strangely, the more he fought, the greater the emptiness became. The constellation, demon-like judge of fire, is looking at you sadly. Yu Jonghyuk frowned and glared at the sky. Demon-like judge of fire. Yu Jonghyuk didn't know why this constellation came so often recently. It was a constellation he had little contact with in the past. The constellation, demon-like judge of fire, is asking why you aren't looking for Kim Dokja. Kim Dokja is dead. The constellation, demon-like judge of fire, is shaking her head while holding back tears. Yu Jonghyuk didn't understand why a constellation was dwelling so much on the death of a single incarnation. The thing he didn't understand was the next message. Your notoriety is spreading in the 73rd demon realm. Again, the message was unforgettable. Yu Jonghyuk didn't know why his notoriety was rising in a distant place like the 73rd demon realm. At first, he thought Kim Dokja was alive and impersonating him. However, even if Kim Dokja was alive, there was no reason for him to do this. Wait, perhaps Kim Dokja is alive and in danger. Maybe Kim Dokja was alive. Maybe he lived alone in the horizon of the story without any scenarios and beyond that damn fate. Thus he survived. Maybe he was asking for help. That guy who always moved ahead by himself was in danger and asking for help for the first time. There was no way to ask for help in the absence of a channel, so Yu Jonghyuk's expression became complicated as he stared up at the sky. The 73rd Demon Realm. Chapter 207, Unidentified Wall 4. Kim Dokja thought, I don't know if people are doing well. I wondered if I could see the story of Earth again on the screen, but there was nothing to be seen. It wasn't easy for the Weni people to easily steal the videos of the docubus. Night was fast approaching. I hadn't slept well for a few days, but the condition of my body wasn't bad because Aileen had repaired my stories. I have temporarily fixed it, but you need to be careful with outside activities. Don't you know, you are still outside the main scenario. You sound like a doctor. I can't speak like a clockmaker because I'm not dealing with clocks now. Aileen watched me before standing up with their repair equipment. Many things had happened in the past 2 days, but she didn't seem dissatisfied with the current situation. Kim Dokja thought, if I hadn't come, Aileen would have kept being a clockmaker. In many regressions, when Yu Jonghyuk hadn't come to the demon world, Aileen would have actually survived. She quietly made clocks that told the time of her home planet and reflected alone on the disappearance of her planet. Sometimes she would struggle with Jang Haeyoung or go out to eat dishes made by Marka. Maybe it was a happier life for Aileen. Do you know, the number of people who had been looking for clocks has increased in the last few days. Aileen looked at me with an unknown gaze. I hesitated for a moment before asking, did their clocks break as a group? Originally, people of the industrial complex don't use clocks. Why? It is because there is no use in knowing something like time. I remembered something I read in Ways of Survival. Someone had referred to the demon world as the city that lost time. Then what about the hours of the night? Can they change their fate if they know when night comes? A fear that was too old became a law. It had happened for so many years that night in the industrial complex had become a natural thing. Once every 3 days, someone would die and their story would be used as fertilizer in the factory. No matter what life they lived, the stories they contained, or the tomorrow they would live, then the rest of the people would live for another 3 days. However, there was a night where no one died. It is because of you. People have started to fear the night again. It isn't a natural thing and can be resolved. They think perhaps they can live tomorrow. This is what they are thinking. My eyes suddenly fell to the watch around Aileen's wrist. There were 3 hours left until night arrived. I listened to the ticking second hand as Aileen remained silent. Perhaps some people in the industrial complex were watching clocks like we were now. Perhaps tonight would be harder and more intense than last night. Then why? I listened to the sound of the second hand moving and felt a bit comforted. I wasn't the one who should be comforted. Thank you. I'm not saying this to praise you. It just doesn't look good if the revolutionary is depressed. Aileen turned away. I laughed at Aileen and quickly added, wait a minute. What? Speaking of clocks, can you make something else? Something else? It is called a smartphone. What is that? Is it magic technology? I was wondering how to explain it and gave an overview of the feature of the smartphone. Then Aileen spoke like she knew. Do you mean something like a communication device? It shows a small panel. That's right. However, there isn't a Docubuy channel here, so communication isn't possible. Considering past experiences, it didn't matter if communication was possible. My phone synced automatically so the text file would be created. Don't worry about it. Can you make it today? I'm afraid it will take at least 3 days. I will try my best. I know, then do your best. I left Aileen's workshop and headed towards the pub. The people who found me on the street stared with strange eyes. Some greeted me after making eye contact, and others lightly gathered both hands together. As Aileen said, I could see something that looked like watches on their wrists. Yu Jonghyuk felt lonely as he saw these watches. They got their time back, but he still was living in this time. Yu Jonghyuk suddenly thought, if so, where do I live in those countless hours? It was the monologue of Yu Jonghyuk, who once saved the demon world. It was also one of my favorite scenes from Ways of Survival. I suddenly seemed to understand a bit of his mind. To the regressor Yu Jonghyuk, the time in these worlds didn't belong to him. In a life that could go back over and over again, the present time was meaningless. Once this was over, I would ask Aileen to make me a watch. If he had something like this, he might become more attached to this world. Maybe the regression depression would get better. I knew that this world wouldn't disappear when he went back in time, but without him, it would be difficult to clear the remaining scenarios. This is really funny. I opened the pub door and saw the laughing Jang Haeyoung. From this distance, he looked like a junior high school student. What are you doing? This time, he didn't make the heek sound. Instead, Jang Haeyoung avoided my eyes like a child caught by his parents doing something bad. I was doing what you asked me to do. Did a fighter reply? That, Jang Haeyoung licked his lips for a while before eventually confessing the truth. None of the fighters replied. Really? No one gave me a response. What did you say? I'm a 15-year-old schoolgirl. My forehead vein bulged. Hey, they didn't reply because you sent that message. But it worked before. Do you think they are all like the Black Flame Dragon? How many messages did you send? A total of 300. Maybe they thought it was a spam message and blocked it. Damn. It's a big deal. I only know the fighters on that list. Jang Haeyoung realized that he was in trouble and paled. Then what now? This was why I needed Ways of Survival. If I had the text file, would have allowed me to reread things and search for more information about the fighters. Let's find out if there are any other fighters, for now. I was reminded of a few modifiers for the constellations. Was there someone among the constellations who could help us? Write a message to Prisoner of the Golden Headband. Isn't he a powerful constellation? I didn't know if he had any skills related to a fighter. However, now was the time to grab onto any piece of straw. Jang Haeyoung typed a message and we waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Jang Haeyoung shook his head. There is no reply. Write this. I dictated the contents of the message again. Then Jang Haeyoung was amazed. Can I use something like this? You just have to get his attention once. The great sage, the equal of heaven, was a lazy guy. It must be to this degree to get a reply. Less than 10 seconds after Jang Haeyoung sent this message, the following notification popped up. A reply has arrived. AA reply is here. Is that right? For reference, the message I sent was as followed. Regrow your hair. Every time I did something, he would pull out his hair in the indirect message. Thus, I figured that he had hair loss. I asked, what did he say? If we meet, he will kill me. What else? He asked who I am. Should I say Yu Jonghyuk? Don't answer. It would be fun to say Yu Jonghyuk, but it would only make the matter bigger. I rubbed my temples. The great sage, the equal of heaven, ate the wrong bait, so we had to find another way. Demon-like judge of fire, I don't think it is good to call her. Secretive plotter, I still don't know his identity. It had become troublesome. Queen of the darkest spring and god of wine and ecstasy are from Olympus. If I revealed that I was alive, some of them would help. The problem was that if I clarified my identity, the nebulae would notice my survival. It is difficult. It was the first challenge I encountered after entering the demon world. There wasn't much time left until night arrived. If Jang Haeyoung didn't become a fighter, then all the plans I set up for tonight would be wasted. At this time, Jang Haeyoung wondered, can the Black Dragon help? I paused for a moment as I thought about the identity of the Black Dragon. You're still talking to him? Yes. Forget that guy, he probably has nothing. No, he was a fighter in the demon world for a while. The abyssal black flame dragon was once a fighter. That story never came out in Ways of Survival. Come to think of it, details of the abyssal black flame dragon were never described in earnest, so it wasn't an impossible story. However, he didn't like the rules of the scenario and killed them all. What? The Duke, the revolutionary, and the executioners, he killed them all. Something suddenly came up. Perhaps it was when the 64th demon realm was integrated. There was one such madman in the history of the demon world. That person was the abyssal black flame dragon. Ask him if he can pass on the fighter's skills to you. The abyssal black flame dragon was a constellation of the evil system, and sending a message to him wouldn't be too obvious. It would be best if we could get help from him. Jang Haeyoung entered something, and then he suddenly lit up. It isn't a problem to give it to me, since he isn't using it anyway. Really? It was an unexpected help. The problem could be solved in a way I hadn't thought of. In fact, neither the Black Dragon or Kim Nam-woon were good guys. I had to carefully read the parts where they appeared once I got the text file back. By the way, Jang Haeyoung's words weren't over. However, he has one condition. That's right, that jerk couldn't give it away so easily. In any case, any transaction through the wall requires a payment. What is his condition? He has a problem recently. A problem? He isn't getting along very well with his incarnation. His incarnation. His incarnation keeps ignoring him. If it was the incarnation of the abyssal black flame dragon. She is in a crisis right now, but she isn't listening to his words. A crisis? I quickly ordered Jang Haeyoung. Tell him to explain the story in detail. Chapter 208, Unidentified Wall 5. There was the sound of a blade penetrating the heart, and the last man fell. Kkuok D-Dog. He tried to squeeze out a curse, but the man's mouth was crushed by the woman's foot. He was the last man. Han Soo-young looked around the office that had become a bloodbath. I barely killed them all. At any rate, the adaptation of the Korean people is dirty and fast. This was the home of Law of the Jungle, an incarnation club of Gyeonggi Province. As soon as the scenario started, they chose a useful sponsor and turned themselves into a criminal group. They were those who refused the control of the government. If she didn't kill them now, they would become a cancer of the Korean peninsula. According to the original novel, they were bound to be such people. Damn Kim Dokja. She started cursing but didn't feel any better. Thus, Han Soo-young added one more thing. Bastard Yu Jonghyuk. She thought of the two people who went their own separate ways, and Han Soo-young felt like an abandoned food processor. Damn it, Kim Dokja has a reason, but what's wrong with Yu Jonghyuk? The moment that Yu Jonghyuk left Seoul Dome, he continued to do things that weren't in the original third regression. He stayed alone in a room, talked to himself, and then threw the Korean Peninsula scenarios away for the personal scenarios. Thanks to this, cleaning up the remnants were left entirely to Han Soo-young. What is he thinking? Shit. In any case, she was currently the last person who read Ways of Survival. Kim Dokja and Yoo Jong-hyuk weren't present, leaving her the only one responsible for the Korean Peninsula. She sighed and quietly left the scene of slaughter. Ah, what a surprise. What are you doing here? There was a woman waiting for her at the office doorway. The woman wore a combat uniform that clung to her body, and her hair flowed around her in a cool manner. As if conscious of the body that was revealed, she wore a wide coat on her shoulders. It was a refreshing but very beautiful face. Well, this was what the media stated. Han Soo-young wondered, I thought you were busy with TV these days. Isn't this the case? Han Soo-young stared at Yoo Sang-ga with a slightly unfriendly look. Yoo Sang-ga moved away from the wall she was leaning on and looked down at Han Soo-young. There was a slight difference in their heights. There was a moment of confrontation before Yoo Sang-ga opened her mouth with a brief sigh. How long are you going to act this way? What? You can't kill all of them just because law and order is gone. Han Soo-young was too lazy to explain and just waved her hands. Yoo Sang-ga didn't know what type of people belonged to Law of the Jungle. In addition, she didn't know what they would do. She didn't know, which was why she could argue with such childish justice. They are the ones who will do something wrong in the future. However, you didn't give them a chance. It has already been determined. You don't know anything, Han Soo-young replied while passing by Yoo Sang-ga. She couldn't share the future. The information that many people knew would become less valuable and would change the future. Kim Dokja would have probably done the same thing. So, 3 ways to survive in a ruined world. Han Soo-young instantly stopped walking at Yoo Sang-ga's words. Isn't that the book the prophets call the Revelation? You must have heard something funny. Did you read it? Han Soo-young bit her lips before opening her mouth. You don't need to know. The constellations seemed to have no idea about this book. The story had slowly spread, so it wasn't strange. Some of the readers were outside Seoul Dome, and there were also the rumors that the prophets had leaked. Yoo Sang-ga also knew that she was the first apostle. Did Kim Dokja read it? That's how he knows the information of the future. Who knows? It was an uncomfortable topic. Han Soo-young pulled out a dagger. The information about ways of survival was filtered, but she didn't know how long it would continue. Thus, she had to reduce the number of mouths. Why did he do that? Han Soo-young turned her head at the sudden sad tone. Why did Dokja Si make such a choice, even though he knows the future? Han Soo-young looked at Yoo Sang-ga's face and seemed to know why she came. Han Soo-young stared quietly at Yoo Sang-ga's face. She had been an ordinary office worker before the scenarios started. She was in the same company as Kim Dokja. Why? Han Soo-young suddenly felt hot. Everybody talks about Kim Dokja everywhere I go. They don't know anything about Kim Dokja. Han Soo-young took short breaths as a terrible voice flowed out. Without knowing why she was so angry, Han Soo-young cried out. He is a selfish bastard. He only thinks about himself from beginning to end. The person who fooled people to the end, lied and disappeared as a hypocrite. What do you know about him? You don't even know if he is dead or alive. A fleeting scene ran through her head. It was Kim Dokja's eyes looking at her in the 10th scenario. It was that damn expression that made her pull out her knife first. No, he can't be dead. I'm sure he is alive and living well in another story. Do you really think so? You do know Kim Dokja. There was a deep sense of self-deprecation in her cold tone. Nobody knew Kim Dokja, including Han Soo-young herself, yet Yoo Sang-ga's answer was different. No, I know. What? A person doesn't change so suddenly. Yoo Sang-ga's voice was calm. The scenarios started, and for a while, Dokja Si was like a different person. A man who could calm down in front of life-threatening situations and kill unknown beasts without hesitation. He was different from the Kim Dokja I knew. You probably didn't know Kim Dokja very well. Even so, Dokja Si is still Dokja Si. Han Suyong closed her mouth. A person who likes reading books rather than building up his specs. His presentation abilities aren't good, but he will listen to someone else's presentation. That Kim Dokja was different from the one Han Suyong knew. The person who knew Kim Dokja was talking. Thus, he was obviously lonely. Somewhere in front of her, Kim Dokja seemed to be making a face. In a world with no one, Kim Dokja might be looking at the sky alone in a world that no one knew. Han Suyong SSI, I have to go and rescue Dokja SSI. Han Suyong saw her determination and felt somehow defeated. You are a lucky person, Kim Dokja. People are worrying about you. Han Suyong was about to open her mouth when a message was heard in the air. A new main scenario has started. Son of a bitch. The great hall was opening in the air. The cries of monsters were heard from somewhere. The surprised Yu Sanga and Han Suyong stood back to back. A giant monster was swooping down through the great hall. Then the Dokibai's voice was heard. The wave pattern is obvious and very slow, but I put it in because people seem to be too free these days. Yu Sanga frowned at the sudden emergence of a situation and frowned. Was this the original content? I don't know, I don't remember everything. This was why she didn't want to do it alone. She knew the future, but the information she knew was about flimsy things. Kim Dokja knew many rounds, and Yu Jonghyuk, who made it through the rounds, might be able to make a breakthrough, but not Han Suyong. The giant serpent flew through the dark clouds and landed on the ground. Every time the long tail swept over the ground, the high-rise buildings collapsed. This was a third-grade strange dragon species, the Kragagan. It was the name of the monster who descended as a disaster in the 12th scenario. How do we beat that? Han Suyong tried hard to recall the contents of the original novel, but no matter how she thought about it, a strategy didn't pop up. Then the only way left was a full-scale battle. Fortunately, there was Yu Sanga right next to her. They weren't colleagues, but it was better than nothing. The Stigma Black Flames LV-6 has been activated. She focused her magic power on her dagger while activating the skills of the weapon. The third-grade strange dragon species, Kragagan, has defended against the attack using fire resistance. The third-grade strange dragon species, Kragagan, has defended against the attack using shadow resistance. Ah, you are no help against a damn lizard. The enemy had fire and dark resistance, so Han Suyong's skills didn't affect it at all. The attacks just seemed to tickle and annoy the strange dragon. The constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, is gloomy. She looked around, and Yu Sanga's situation didn't seem much better. Han Suyong thought to herself, if only she had inherited the story of the Abyssal Black Flame Dragon. Damn it, how do I inherit that damn story? Han Suyong's expression darkened as she looked at the group of incoming strange dragons. If that jerk Kim Dokja was here, he could have told her what to do. It was at this moment. The constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, tell you that if you want, can you tell their weakness. You know their weakness. The constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, is nodding. Don't make a fool of yourself. You don't know much about the scenarios. The constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, is jumping around wildly. Han Suyong listened to the Black Dragon's childish message and inwardly sighed. That brat Kim Dokja, he must have laughed at me when I chose the Black Dragon. The Abyssal Black Flame Dragon was clearly a powerful constellation. However, his intelligence was much lower compared to other constellations. Why? This guy was too strong since his birth and didn't need much strategy to attack the scenarios. It was cool to hear, but it wasn't good from the position of his incarnation. However, this time something was different. The constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, says that the Kragagan's weakness is the silver scale on top of its head. Really? Last time you told me the wrong thing. The constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, claims on his Black Flame Dragon that this is real. You said that last time as well. The constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, claims this story was told by a reliable source. Reliable source. Since there was no other method, Han Suyong decided to follow the words of the Black Flame Dragon. Han Suyong jumped onto the strange dragon's tail and used footwork to run up. She crossed the streamlined body. She really saw a silver scale near the crown of his head. Hayep! The dagger dug into the scale and the Kragegan collapsed with a terrible scream. The breath of the giant monster stopped in an instant. Han Suyong was stunned and muttered, "Really? Aren't you quite useful?" The constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, is puffing up his chest with a triumphant expression. Yu Sanga flew through the air and said, "Do you know its weakness?" "No, not me. In any case, the silver scale is its weakness. That's all you have to attack." Thanks to the information given by the Black Dragon, the two of them safely suppressed the Kragagans. The constellation, Bald General of Justice, admires your performance. Han Suyong received the messages of the constellations and slightly frowned. Usually it would be a pleasant situation, but today something was wrong. She always felt like this when she was teased by Kim Dokja. At this moment, something ran through her head. "Hey, Black Flame Dragon." The constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, is surprised and looks at his incarnation. "Tell me honestly, who did you hear this from?" "The third night has arrived." I listened to the message and recalled what happened a while ago. He really did as I told him. Just like Kim Namwoon, perhaps the Abyssal Black Flame Dragon wasn't as bad as I knew. Either way, he was Han Suyong's sponsor. Thus, it was okay to tell him this. "I am safe, don't worry. Tell this to the person who asked." Revolutionary. I had to endure this. Endure it now so I could smile and meet them again. I quietly moved through the night. Quack! Screams came from everyone. It wound the sound that signaled the executioners appearing. It was bloody from the beginning. Maybe it would be a terrible night that couldn't be compared to the other 2 days. I killed 3 executioners, so tonight they would come full force. Nevertheless, I wasn't afraid. Starting from tonight, I would start the counterattack. Jang Haeyoung. Jang Haeyoung walked forward at my words. He was very tense, but it wasn't the same expression as before. Jang Haeyoung asked, "Can I do well?" "No one can do it better than you." "Do you really think so? I only learnt the skill 2 hours ago." 2 hours is enough. I spoke with confidence. It wasn't just to reassure Jang Haeyoung. Who is the most perfect incarnation? One day, the flippant commentators of the Star Stream discussed this topic. The strongest incarnation in a one-on-one fight is definitely Yu Jonghyuk. There is no one who can fight as well as him. No one can beat Anna Croft when it comes to information. How about Lee Hyun-sung? He is the best tanker. It is Ranveer Khan in Major Wars. Jang Haeyoung's name wasn't mentioned at all. He was inferior to Yu Jonghyuk in a one-on-one fight. He had less information than Anna Croft. His defense wasn't better than Lee Hyun-sung. He wasn't as effective as Ranveer Khan in a major war. However, the most perfect incarnation is someone who must do well in everything. Then it has been decided. He had more defense than Yu Jonghyuk. He was better in a one-on-one fight than Anna Croft. He was better in a large war than Lee Hyun-sung. He was an outstanding presence, was more information than Ranveer Khan. The character Jang Haeyoung has used fighter transformation LV. 9. Jang Haeyoung is the most perfect incarnation. Jang Haeyoung's body moved in a burning curve and painted the sky red. He wasn't exceptional in one area, but he had the most attributes and skills of everyone in ways of survival. The moment he acquired a skill, he had the ability to reach the highest level of the skill sooner than anyone else. The master of the unidentified wall, the king of transcendence, Jang Haeyoung. The second part of Ways of Survival began with this guy. Chapter 209, Unidentified Wall 6. The character Jang Haeyoung has awakened as a fighter. Just as a guardian had the skill guard, a fighter had the skill fighter transformation. It was a skill that melted all of their fears and turned it into force. Thanks to this skill, a person who had been exploited for a long time could gain a more powerful force. In that sense, Jang Haeyoung was a good candidate to be a fighter even without the unidentified wall. Haliapu. The problem was that he was too excited. A sky-shattering sound was heard. The fighter was a position capable of exerting as much power as possible against an executioner. Perhaps Jang Haeyoung was currently feeling like a constellation. "Don't mess around, you idiot." I belatedly raised my voice, but Jang Haeyoung had already gone out of my reach. This was the problem with Jang Haeyoung. In fact, I wasn't afraid of Jang Haeyoung's talent. I was afraid of him running wild as a result of his talent. Kim Doksha thought, Jang Haeyoung isn't without talent, rather he has too much talent. The only all-rounder in ways of survival, Jang Haeyoung. Jang Haeyoung's unidentified wall guaranteed a formidable growth only through skills obtained from the wall's transactions. Of course, it was impossible to reach the grounds of transcendence, but Jang Haeyoung could raise his skill level faster than anyone else. It was a talent that could go beyond other people's training in just a few hours. Such talent would inevitably make the owner of the talent dangerous. At our yo-yo. I barely managed to catch up with Jang Haeyoung, where he was already engaged with an executioner. The sparks of a fighter wrapped around Jang Haeyoung and protected him from the executioner's scythe. The mark isn't available for this position. Perhaps the executioner would be receiving such a message now. Ths are yo-yo perhaps. However, enlightenment was too late. Jang Haeyoung overcame the executioner's scythe and grabbed its neck with a skillful move. Okay. It wasn't possible for a fighter to show this much combat power. At most, they were usually one level of power beyond the executioner. Now Jang Haeyoung was completely overwhelming the executioner. It was only possible because it was Jang Haeyoung. The caught executioner struggled like a ferocious rat, but it couldn't endure Jang Haeyoung's slowly tightening grip. There was the sound of bones breaking, and the executioner's body dangled down. Then the hem of the executioner's cloth started scattering. It was an absurd end for the existences who had dominated the industrial complex's night for decades. An executioner has been killed by a fighter. Current number of executioners remaining, 6. The citizens injured by the executioners were looking this way. Jang Haeyoung's fire lit up the night. It was like a glowing sun. However, Jang Haeyoung wasn't the sun and it was currently night. An executioner has died. An executioner has died. No way, it is currently night. A fighter has appeared. After the end of the executioner, the people hiding in the houses stretched out their heads. They were people who had been living for a long time in the shadow of the night. The citizens are influenced by the heat of the revolution. They were coming out of their houses one by one. They stared at Jang Haeyoung like he was the leader. The character Jang Haeyoung has stiffened because of fighter transformation. This jerk thought he was a revolutionary. I lightly slapped Jang Haeyoung's back. Ugh. Jang Haeyoung's red-tinged eyes slowly recovered. Jang Haeyoung was belatedly aware of the pain and glared at me as he held the back of his head. That hurts. Why did you hit me so hard? Steady your mind. You will be in trouble if you act like an idiot. It should be the crowd that is heated up. If the person who leads is swept away by the heat, the revolution won't be able to tolerate the fire and will go out before it burns properly. These were Yu Jonghyuk's words in the 111th regression. It was a shameful line for me to spit out, so I kept it to myself. Jang Haeyoung looked at me disapprovingly and pouted. It hurts more than the executioner. Then I hit you properly. Jang Haeyoung's current strength was limited to the scenario, and it was only when dealing with the executioners. It was dangerous to be taken in by such power. Aileen shouted in the distance. There are 2 in the west, 1 to the south, the rest are in the north. It was clear what these numbers meant. Let's move. Jang Haeyoung nodded and we ran through the night. I looked at Jang Haeyoung, who was going ahead again, and heard a message in my mind. The fourth wall is looking at Jang Haeyoung with a desire to eat. No way, don't even think about it. Just like against Nirvana and the outer god, the fourth wall coveted Jang Haeyoung's story. It probably wasn't just Jang Haeyoung but the unidentified wall as well. The fourth wall is sorry. I thought you wanted to make friends with that wall. You shouldn't eat your friend. Kim Dokja, who wanted to be friends with the fourth wall, said. It was a real brat. Well, there were screams from the rushing crowd. A fighter has appeared, hang in there. They screamed while wielding weapons towards the executioners. The fires of magic power popped up in various places around the industrial complex. People were fighting back. They were fighting against opponents they couldn't face. I could believe it if one of them was a revolutionary. An executioner has been killed by a fighter. Current number of executioners remaining, 5. Jang Haeyoung knocked down another executioner. Now there were only 5 remaining. Once all the executioners died, the Duke would no longer be able to hide. From then on, the real revolution would start. Kill everybody. Why? As the citizens gained courage, the executioners gradually slowed down. No one apart from the fighter could harm an executioner during the night. Nevertheless, the important thing was atmosphere. Foolish. An executioner who swung its scythe was attacked by Jang Haeyoung. 2 executioners had already died, so this one didn't face Jang Haeyoung head-on. The executioner fled like it was frightened. The citizens watched the executioner running away and shouted, "They're going away." Jang Haeyoung stepped on the low roofs of the industrial complex and chased after the executioner. Everything was flowing smoothly. At this rate, the night would pass safely. The Duke would be forced to recall the night in order to reduce the damage to the executioners. Even so, Kim Dokja was vigilant to the end. There were countless revolutionaries who died in the history of the demon world. Until the night was gone, the revolutionary should be vigilant until the end, even if I was a fake revolutionary. Kim Dokja thought. The spy Han Myungo was caught by me, and 3 executioners died during the day. The balance of power was collapsing, and the atmosphere of the industrial complex was rapidly changing. Under these circumstances, the Duke couldn't send the night again without a plan. At least not the Duke Siswitz I knew. Sure enough, I felt something flying towards my neck and reflexively leaned back. 4 scythes passed over my head and hit the roofs. My head would be gone if I had been 1 second slower. They had been hiding. Apart from the executioner that Jang Haeyoung was chasing, the 4 other executioners all aimed for me. It couldn't compare to the first day. I used Bookmark to trigger Way of the Wind, but it wasn't enough to avoid all the flying attacks. The Guardian. Someone is using their vitality to protect you. The hiding Mark used Guard on me. Now Mark had 2 points remaining. The executioners didn't leave despite the effect of Guard being applied to me. The stupid Kim Dokja started thinking. It felt like they were dragging out the time. I noticed the Duke's plan. The Duke knew a fighter would appear. Jang Haeyoung was in danger. I condensed the wind using Way of the Wind and made a powerful explosion behind me. I shot forward like a comet, and the perplexed executioners shouted after me. Send up. I borrowed the power of Guard and waved to break through the wall of executioners. Jang Haeyoung had gone chasing after 1 executioner. Presumably, there would also be a Ayak. There was a sharp scream, and I saw Jang Haeyoung flying back while bleeding. Damn it, this was why I hit him. I controlled the wind and caught the falling body. Hey, are you okay? Hyuk Kyak. He was coughing up blood. It wasn't a fatal injury, but it would be hard for him to continue fighting. I wanted to know who made the Knight's fighter like this, but then I saw an oversized executioner walking towards this side. Revolution Ari. It was impossible. An executioner could never win against a fighter at night, yet this one. The collar of the executioner slowly scattered, and the face of a demon was exposed. Now I realized what happened. Jang Haeyoung wasn't hit with the power of an executioner. The power of this story was incomparable to the demon Baron and Earl I first saw when I came here. I watched him carefully and asked, "You used your head and used a technique other than execution. You aren't a duke, so you must be a marquis. Am I correct?" I asked first, "Are you the revolutionary?" "That's right, I am the revolutionary." A cheeky voice. The demon's thick eyebrows wriggled and he spoke in a somewhat languid voice. I am Marquis Ostian. Demon Marquis Ostian. Along with Duke Siswitz, he was one of the two marquises leading this industrial complex. I think there is one more. You have keen eyes. A Hmong demon emerged from the darkness. This one didn't seem to have the power of an executioner. You are also a marquis. It wasn't the demon who answered the question. Am Marquis Quartito. Marquis Quartito stood under the moonlight as the citizens screamed. Ostian and Quartito. The two marquises leading the Siswitz industrial complex appeared at the same time, causing the citizens to be completely frightened. Duke Siswitz liked things to be certain. He didn't know the identity of the enemy, so he sent out both marquises. You created such a nuisance during this precious time. You are a big guy. Their expressions showed it was annoying to take care of a nuisance. It was understandable since they had been in control of the industrial complex for hundreds of years. After already deciding I was dead, the two marquises stared at the other citizens. The surrounding pressure soared and the citizens were forced to kneel. The incarnations trembled and held their breaths. The marquises spoke towards them. This is the price you will receive. The story ruler's command is activated. The edge of the language created by the marquises threatened the citizens. Nothing had happened yet, but the words themselves started to dominate the imagination of the citizens. You will lose everything valuable. They imagined losing their precious families. You will lose the peaceful nights. They were deprived of all the nights of peace. You will pay the price for disturbing this industrial complex. They paid a price that they could never afford. This is the meaning of revolution. The sentences fell like a final verdict. The citizens were mired in them and stared up at the marquises with frightened eyes. The marquises laughed like this situation was satisfactory. Look, your hopes are crumbling. They decided to use this as an opportunity to consolidate the ruling system. Bihyung should see this nonsense. The two marquises turned towards me while directing their status towards me. Ordinary citizens would be terrified right now. However, while all citizens were kneeling on the ground, I alone stood upright. The perplexed marquises stared at me and shouted again, look at how he collapses. The marquises attempted to use their status to pressure me several times. The veins bulged as if they were exerting all their might to reveal their presence. Collapse, know this. I slowly approached them. Kim Dokja thought. Only a fighter could deal with an executioner at night. The enemies decided to utilize their force instead of using the positions of the scenario. Thus, it was necessary to respond to them. It can't be avoided this time. If I opened this power, my incarnation body would shake a lot. However, it was inevitable to deal with a marquis. I needed to use the minimum of strength. I had to get rid of them with optimal efficiency. I knew what they wanted to ask and preempted them. Who am I? A marquis-grade noble was strong. Still, no matter how strong they were, it was just a measurement of the incarnations. They were those who didn't even match the upper-grade constellations. I slowly closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I felt somewhat uncomfortable. I had never done this since becoming a constellation. The constellation status is released. The status, which couldn't be compared to the previous one, crushed the time and space in the area. Chapter 210, Hatching 1. It was the first time I felt like this in my life. I felt so enormous that I focused on this feeling and forgot to say that I was Yu Jonghyuk. It felt like dozens of meters of time and space were kneeling before me. This was what the constellations felt. Your incarnation body isn't suitable for expressing your status. I had adjusted the level, but there was still a huge burden on my body. It wasn't even a proper release of my status in the first place. Your status is disagreeing with your incarnation body and will be temporarily adjusted. Your current status is upper grade. A narrative grade status wasn't something my incarnation body could afford. Even the upper grade constellations couldn't keep their dignity in the form of a symbol, let alone a ragged incarnation body. However, this was enough. Kakyakyugu. The incarnations were letting out pain sounds. I saw this and quickly confined it to the radius of the marquises. The half-kneeling marquises had expressions like they lost their souls. Someone in the demon world has detected your presence. Someone in the demon world has detected your presence. Someone in the demon world has detected your presence. It was just a short moment, yet I already received 3 messages. They were probably the demon kings of the demon world. It didn't matter. I was going to let them know eventually. In addition, they couldn't tell who I was at this level. Your incarnation body can't afford your status. The stories making up my back started falling away. Fortunately, it was in a blind spot and the marquises hadn't noticed yet. This aura. A constellation. Marquis Ostian belatedly regained his spirit and screamed. Quartito next to him was on the verge of retreating back. It was a spectacular sight, but I couldn't waste time. Your incarnation body has started to collapse. I didn't have a lot of fighting power compared to my status. Thus, I had to end it the moment the opponents died. The exclusive skill bookmark is activated. Then why? Sparks appeared in the air and the skill was forcibly terminated. Your incarnation body is too unstable to use that skill. Son of a bitch, was I too hasty? You have used a strength that doesn't meet the probability. The exile penalty is accelerated. I had engaged in combat recently and expected this to happen. However, the collapse of my body was much faster than expected. It seemed that the burden of extracting a constellation status was considerable. The marquises started to adapt and push themselves against my pressure. They seemed to have one legendary story or many history-grade stories. I guess they were on the level of Reinheit of Paradise. Even if you are a constellation, you can't kill me in the scenario. In addition, they were smart. Marquis Ostian once again transformed into an executioner and aimed a scythe at me. It was a situation where the only fighter, Jang Haeyoung, couldn't move. Now I had no way to kill this guy. The situation started flowing in an even worse direction. In exile. Don't tell me. The story fragments falling from my body increased, and the marquises finally noticed. I wasn't able to use Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint due to the skill's restriction, but I seemed to know what they were thinking. If I could get that guy's story. The hyenas hunting the injured predator started to carefully surround me. Call for reinforcements. We can destroy him if we drag out the time. There was a whistle, and executioners approached from every direction. I also felt unusual movements from the nobles on the factory side. Kim Dokja thought, to kill a marquis, I must use at least electrification. But I can't use the skill. If I wasted more time, my body and the citizens would be at risk. I have to kill them using a method other than skills. Hell, there was only one way. The moment I made a decision, Marquis Ostian approaching me let out a terrible scream. Quack. Marquis Ostian's arm rolled along the ground. He was currently an executioner and shouldn't be hurt by normal attacks. It meant, you shouldn't be so careless. Jang Haeyoung stood behind him and laughed like a villain. It was an incredible recovery when considering what happened earlier. The character Jang Haeyoung has used the skill Immortal Body LV. 7. Immortal Body. Wasn't this a healing skill from the Murim world? Jang Haeyoung felt my gaze and muttered like he was giving an excuse. One of the people I chatted to was from Murim. I watched the ashamed Jang Haeyoung and sighed. He didn't talk with just the Black Dragon. By the way, Immortal Body was part of the Breaking the Sky sword style. Hit them all, kill the fighter first. Marquis Ostian removed the status of executioner and shouted at the surprised reinforcements. The remaining 4 executioners and the nobles who arrived started to surround us. I counted 3 earls and give barons. There was Baron Mellon, who I saw on my first day here. There, save the revolutionary. The citizens ran to save us, but the numbers were still lacking. Jang Haeyoung turned pale as he watched the nobles who were taking out weapons. What should I do? I can't kill them. A fighter was strong against the executioner but vulnerable to all other positions. In the end, I had to deal with the rest. Deal only with the executioners. I blocked the nobles aiming for Jang Haeyoung. Countless spears headed towards me, but I didn't avoid them. You are currently under the protection of the scenario. I couldn't die under the protection of guard. I could handle them one by one without overdoing it. As if reading my thoughts, a message appeared in the air. The ruler has forcibly recalled the knight. The ruler. It was a position that referred to the duke, the master of this industrial complex. No one has died tonight. Night was over, but the fight was still continuing. No, it was starting from now on. The power of the scenario that is protecting you has disappeared. His protection has been released. Kill him. He is a guy with amazing stories. The nobles rushed at me with anticipating, and I smiled bitterly. You slightly used your head, but this was a mistake. Night disappeared, and the strength of the executioner couldn't be used. In addition, the marquises who were the core leadership of the industrial complex were here. I had been waiting for a long time. Open the story. My body was unstable and I couldn't use skills. This didn't mean I had no way to fight. The history-grade story Bug Slaughter has been activated. It was impossible to open a story above legendary grade in my present state. However, I didn't need a legendary story to deal with these guys. This was a story that used the status at the highest level. It was a story that the demon noble called Tentasio had once used in Dark Castle. I slowly blinked and felt the nobles in front of me becoming smaller. The story Bug Slaughter was gained in exchange for killing tens of thousands of bugs. It was a terrible and vulnerable story when encountering a strong person, but it was different when dealing with a weak person. You have absolute power over all beings with a lower status than you. This story is only available to existences with a certain level of status. A menacing air emerged from my body, and the complexions of the approaching nobles turned blue. This is ridiculous. It was already too late to feel regret. There was no need to use a sword. The muscles of my body instantly swelled, and I started to beat the nobles with my fists. Quack. It was literally a slaughter. You have acquired a history-grade story. You have acquired a history-grade story. The stories of the nobles entered my hands one by one. Your incarnation body is rapidly collapsing. I quickly opened a hole in the bodies of the barons and then pulled off the heads of the earls. The situation suddenly reversed, and the remaining nobles started to run away. Run away. He isn't someone you can deal with quickly. I missed some people, but I didn't miss the important ones. Quack. Quartito and Ostian struggled as I grabbed them by the neck. I didn't hesitate to hit their heads together and then pierced both heads with a hand. Hyuk. The situation would have been different if it was a full-blown resistance. However, the marquises had been defeated by my status and couldn't resist. You have obtained many new stories. You have killed the demon marquis, Quartito. You have killed the demon marquis, Ostian. A new achievement has been acquired. Your notoriety is spreading in the 73rd demon realm due to the killing of the marquises. The high-ranking nobles of the demon world will fear you. 50,000 coins have been acquired as compensation for the achievement. It was a small amount of compensation, but it was better than nothing. I looked around and saw Jang Haeyoung and the citizens organizing the remaining situation. The surviving executioners and nobles were retreating towards the factory. Your incarnation body is reaching its limit. The story Bug Slaughter has been forcibly terminated. My vision momentarily shook and I became dizzy. I shouted towards the people fleeing towards the factory. Baron Gillat, Baron Sarabos, and Earl Mokba. They were the names of the surviving executioners. It was the names of the executioners I got from Han Mungo in advance. Now Jang Haeyoung and I didn't have the energy to chase or engage with them. Thus I called out their names. It was a type of warning. I knew all their identities. I knew who they were and their positions. Therefore, they could die at any time. The executioners trembled as they were threatened for the first time in their lives. I shouted towards them, "Tell this to the Duke." The light of dawn started shining like a lot of time had passed. In the dim and pervasive shadows, I slowly concluded my words. Learn to fear the day. I was going to collapse at any moment, but I didn't lose consciousness until the remnants of the nobles disappeared into the factory. Someone muttered, "Our revolution." People started to call out for a revolution. I listened to these voices and recalled my favorite sentence from the revolutionary arc. In the light of dawn, the stop time of the industrial complex started flowing again. The anger and screams of those who had been sleeping for a long time in the night. They were asleep for a long time, and now feelings they didn't know existed were waking up. Revolutionary, revolutionary. Yu Jonghyuk. Your influence has transcended the influence of the real revolutionary. The acquisition conditions have been satisfied, and a new story is created. The new story, Silver Screen Revolutionary, has begun. Bihyung and the constellations should have seen this sight. It was a waste. I would have received a lot of coins. Then the message arrived like it had been waiting. The Dakibai egg has responded to your story. The Dakibai egg has started to record your story. The vibrations of the egg became stronger, and I heard another message. The egg's hatching is imminent. I knew that the time had come when I had the sound of cracking. Indeed, there was no need for other Dakibis at this stage. It was because a Dakibai had been present in this stage from the beginning. A temporary channel will be created in the demon world. The demon world scenario would start from now on. The constellation, Demon King of Salvation, has entered the temporary channel.